talk about it on stream.
Yes. So basically, the way I view it is, uh, you know, the way I view it is that there are, of course, like biological differences between different, broad groups of humans. You
Yeah,
could
they're
call that
clines.
race.
We'll call them
But
clines.
yeah,
Right. Just to use
yes,
the technical
like
term.
and like yes, and it can get blurry in the geographical, border areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to define, where white ends and brown starts, probably somewhere in the Balkans or the Middle East.
Yeah, absolutely. I
And
agree with that as well. I also, to add to you, there's more genetic diversity in Africa than there is amongst
yeah,
all other races.
exactly.
Mhm.
So yeah, we broadly, I would say, like, you're a smart person, so I don't think there will be any disagreement there. So uh, the way I see it is that as long as a person is able to reason, and they don't have to be particularly smart about it, like as long as they're
Mhm.
able to, exhibit some rationality, then from that they have moral agency and they have rights. And there
Correct.
can be differences, but those differences are, they're not in the realm of morality and legality. They're maybe in the realm of biology or some other thing. And
I agree with all that. Yeah.
like, yeah, and there might be IQ differences, but the reason I have some hesitancy towards IQ differences would be, let's just, there's a lot of questioning on, what even IQ represents, and legitimate questioning, but let's chalk it up to some measure of intelligence.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a
but
strong corollary with G factor is what I would say. Like IQ intelligence quotient, as
Mhm.
created by Binet, originally hoping to find mentally retarded at the time children,
Yeah.
so that they could get early interventions in the school system. Eventually
Mhm.
became the greatest test we have in terms of adequately determining G factor, but it's not a 1-to-1 of G factor, right? I mean, IQ doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
measure kinesthetic intelligence, right? Like you'll see fighters or
Mhm.
athletes that have a certain form of intelligence that isn't a perfect 1-to-1 ratio with IQ, things like that. But yeah, it's the closest measure
Mhm.
we have of G factor.
Yeah. And so, what, a lot of people you would see online who would say that, that this group of people has so and so low IQ.
Hmm.
So it
Yeah,
is like
like American
the
blacks, they have
implication
low
almost
IQ.
being, yeah, yeah. So the implication almost being that because they are less smart than the standard, that means that immoral behavior would follow, which is where I would draw the line, because you can be dumb and moral, right? So, like, I
Yeah,
would simply say that it is not, the IQ is not the relevant factor to look at here. Like, I
I
come from
disagree.
a
This is
much
where we
more
disagree. Yeah.
objectivist background, right? Yeah. So I'm coming from a much more objectivist background, and I would say that IQ, wealth, like IQ would be intelligence, wealth, and many other, uh, factors which
Hmm.
show a prosperous, healthy population. I think they follow from the basic philosophy that the population holds. So you could
I mean,
almost say that.
I would say that they
Mhm.
are corollaries. And the reason they are corollaries is that it is more difficult to have a proper philosophy, and ever increasingly more difficult to instantiate that proper philosophy in your behavior the lower your IQ is.
Mhm.
I don't disagree that
Uh,
there are, like I don't think low IQ and immorality are two things that are like inherently connected, right? But they are statistically
mhm.
connected, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that is an important fact that we have to discuss as a society, and we have to
Mhm.
look at what measures or we can what things we can do to try and elevate,
Mhm.
or at the very least alleviate, things that are lowering IQ to some degree, right? Like what interventions are being done that may be harming IQ, as well as
Mhm.
what interventions may be done that are eugenically shaping IQ. And I think, welfare,
Mhm.
for example, is something that
Yeah.
incentivizes the breeding of impoverished, low IQ people, right? Like, and
Yes.
disincentivizes the breeding of upper middle class people. And I
Mhm.
think we get into, I mean, that's kind of the theme of the film Idiocracy. It's a bit of a meme.
Yeah.
They attribute it to the wrong thing, which is public schools. Harrington, that's almost certainly not having an effect on IQ. It may be having some very, very, very small. It's almost certainly having an effect, however, on an improper philosophy. And that is where I absolutely agree that a proper philosophy can be given to anyone. But when you start talking about people that have a sub 70 IQ, which is 1 out of 6 black people in America, you're getting into the realm of where a proper philosophy is statistically very, very unlikely, no matter how hard you try to ingrain that. You're getting to the point where empathy becomes a difficult cognitive function, and where low time preference thinking becomes almost impossible. Like, it requires great strain to think about things 3-4 steps ahead and think, what will the future outcomes be, and what will the future outcomes be for other people. And so when you have a population with an IQ of 85, you know, you have, you know, 1 standard deviation away is 70, right? And so when you, that's kind of my thing. Like, I totally understand the fear, the necessary, maybe not fear, but like the trepidation of anybody that talks about IQ and race statistics, because you know it's very quickly going to, you can't send links in chat. I told you, you can't do it in super chats? Oh, well, DM me over Discord. I thought you could do it in super chats. I swear I've seen people do it before, but maybe they were moderators. Sorry, getting back to it. It was just a problem in stream I had to take care of. I totally understand being trepidatious anytime you see somebody talking about race and IQ, because it's like one of those things that is an important fact, but it's also a big red flag of like, why is this important to you? Like, what is your motivation for talking about this? But I look at the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk as like a really big kind of like a really big alarm bell and warning sign, because here you have one of the very few people in America that is talking about race and crime statistics and IQ. He wasn't really talking about IQ that much. But like, and we assassinated that person. And we're increasingly getting to the point where people that talk about race and IQ are Nazis, and everybody else denies it and refuses to talk about it, which means we can't solve it, because the only people willing to acknowledge the elephant in the room are Nazis. So I think it's incumbent and important upon us to have these conversations in a way where we can be one of the few people that says, no, this is not inherent to blackness. This is not inherent to any ethnic group that is already a sloppy category of genetic groups. Like, but at the same time, you know, the demographic data is true, and we should investigate those factors and see what's causing that, and do our best to alleviate that.
Which is also where I would say something like this. Again, this is a little bit might be abstract theory brained, but like, there was a point in time in which, like, currently take the highest IQ population in the world, there probably was a point in time in which they were idiotic savages, and what pulled them out of that, right?
So I mean
I would argue that
Han Chinese, right? Han Chinese would be the so that would for everyone not familiar with race and IQ statistics, which totally reasonable that you aren't. Han Chinese is not it doesn't mean Chinese. When you're looking at race racial clines, what we were talking about Koreans, we were talking about Eastern seaboard Chinese and Japanese. That is what Han Chinese means as an ethnic group, right? So not Laotians, not Hmong, not, you know, Mongolians,
Asian,
not
right?
Like not the whole category of East Asian, but just that specific group. They tend to have an IQ that averages around 104.
So what could we see that let's say brings them to this? Because I could speak from, you know, 2 other aspects that I have seen personally. One would be like, I'm currently in India, so there's the caste system here, which is of course evil. But in the caste system, you have you know, certain castes which were specialized in, you know, reading and writing and philosophy and all of those things, and business. Those people, you would see like genuine higher test scores throughout, and you know, so you could see that
Brahmin tend to have a slightly higher IQ. I mean, there's a bit of a brain drain situation where, you know, a lot of Brahmin fled to Europe and America. But
I want to be one of them. Yeah, but continue. I am not staying here.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So yeah. So, but as long as I'm here, I'm still part of Libertarian Party of India, which uh, you were kind enough to interview. But I have been with you before that. I've
Not
been in the.
kind, man. It was a great interview. I had an amazing conversation with them. Like
Mhm.
they were kind enough
Yeah.
to sit down with me.
Yeah. Amazing people, by the way. Like
Hey, crowd.
they have been putting in a lot of work, and
Mm-hmm. It's an
like
uphill
I
battle.
do.
India is a special level of hell.
Oh yeah.
No offense. I don't mean it like as I don't mean it like the typical conservative that's like, and they
No,
have
you're
poop
just right.
festivals. I just mean like you have socialism baked into your constitution. Like that is a fucking
Yes.
uphill fight. I mean, put everything else
Not
aside.
just that, it's also the philosophy, right? It's also the like what we have is socialism. Like what we have is from the there are two Eastern philosophies. One would be Hinduism, which is basically the whatever emerged in the Indian subcontinent is just chalked up to Hinduism. So it is literally everything.
Yeah.
You could find any Western philosopher and find its equivalent in Hinduism. So
For the record, guys,
the only
if you want a good like starting point, Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha is a great fictional work of like a Western interpretation of Hinduism that like can dip your feet, because people will be like, go read the Bhagavad Gita, and it's like you're not going to understand it. Like you'll read it and it'll be a cool story, but like you're not going to get any of the religion aspects of it. Like you got to start with something more palatable, and I think Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, it's only like 88 pages too, by the way. Great book.
And so like there's Hinduism, there's Islam, and then there is Western secularism, which is basically just leftism, right? Like woke leftism. So that's the three major forces in India currently, and we're trying to inject libertarianism as a fourth force, and let's see. Like it is a very 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 minor force right now. Maybe like we have like 10,000 people on Twitter, which are more or less libertarian, but there's a country of 1 billion. So what can we do?
Yeah, it's like 1.2 billion last I checked.
We got to 10,000 in like 2 years. So that's a lot for 2 years, right?
I mean, Liquid Zulu has a bit of this white pill that he says all the time on his streams, which is, just remember that this entire concept of objectivism, libertarianism, and everything, all of it, started on Rothbard's couch in the 1950s. You know what I mean? So where we are already having a president in Argentina, is amazing. Hold on one second. My mother's calling me.
Okay.
Hey, Mom, what's up? You're trying to do fucking lip reading? How dare you? All right.
Hey, what's up?
Sorry, my mom was having a bit of a thing. It's whatever. She's got to take care of.
So actually, coming back to race from India, like India, we can talk about India all day, but coming back to race, it would be so. The Indian context, there is the caste differences, and then from the Western context, you could say that the West went from technically, like a peasant backwater, and then they discovered Aristotle, and from Aristotle, they, the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, and the West became the dominant force on the planet, right? So, and of course, with that, intelligence and wealth also went up. So, like, I'm looking at it from a causality perspective, and you could also say, let's take the Black community, for example. Like the experience these people have had.
Intelligence does not go up with education or
with wealth,
or with wealth,
with like I would say.
The only effect that you can. No, I'm sure about this. 100%
extremely
sure about
poor
this.
people would be just
extremely poor people that are affected by malnutrition and improper development of the brain. Right. Like, so if you India, when certain areas of India before British colonization. And during British colonization, right? But and some places in Africa, you can see an IQ increase when a new population is given proper nutrition, but no level of like education or wealth or proper philosophy is going to change G factor. But you are correct, right? That if you have a destitute third world nation that suffers from starvation or malnutrition, that has an effect, but that's an effect on the brain.
Like you're just letting people not die, right? So like they're less malnutrition and they're able to develop into their natural.
People are saying, I disagree. I think it's probable that education increases IQ, but there is a limit. No, because IQ is So in the old days, if you look at like the 1960s and 1970s and even the 1980s, you might find research that supports this fact. And that's because the IQ test was, there's multiple different firms that have different IQ tests now, right? So to explain IQ a little better, when you are in America, for example, in order to administer an IQ test, an actual IQ test, you not only need to be, in most states, you need to be a psychologist and hold a PhD, but in some states you can be a counselor. So you can have a master's degree in counseling. But you also need to test and train with that company's test and the administration of that test, just the same way that you would
doing the test.
Right. And you have to do it just like when you do your internship or your residency. You have to do the same thing for being able to administer IQ tests. And the IQ test is designed and is much, much better now than it was, like I said, in the 70s or 80s, to more adequately measure IQ. Because what IQ is the ability to learn, or the innate intelligence of the individual. It is supposed to be a test that remains static throughout your life, unless, of course, you get like dementia or something. And it's about your ability to learn concepts, not what it is that you know. And so a proper philosophy, maybe it can have a 1, 2, 3 point difference. Every intervention that we've seen, the maximum that we can find is a 4 point difference, which is not just under 1/3 of a standard deviation, right? So it's pretty fucking stagnant. Like when I'm being hyperbolic when I say education can have no effect. Yes, it has effect, but it's a very, very limited effect, and it's essentially meaningless.
But I mean I mean in terms of like decades and centuries, right? Like a proper philosophy comes around, people then have a better epistemology, they develop more and more in science and wealth, and through that we get better and better. Like IQ, correct me if I'm wrong, but IQ is re-standardized every so often, right? Because people are generally just getting smarter. And
what's called the Flynn effect, FLYNN, the Flynn effect. Interestingly enough, in many Western nations, the Flynn effect has begun to plateau. So we're not actually readjusting it, but that's most likely due to immigration, because the Flynn effect seems to still be in effect in white and Asian. It still seems to be affecting every demographic when you cut it up by demographic, but they're not doing the Flynn effect because they're bringing in so many people that are lower IQ, ethnically.
So the average is canceled out, right?
Right, the averages are canceling out. Yeah.
So but that's what I'm thinking. That like,
I mean, look,
over time,
anything's possible, because in order to do a perfect nature versus nurture kind of study on IQ, you would have to do extremely unethical studies. And the reason is that there's like nobody really, we know the heritability of IQ is roughly around like, depending upon different metrics, it can be like 70 to 80%. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the genetic heritability, right? Because smart people have smart kids, but smart people also give their kids more opportunities. Smart people also tend to raise their children with better, emotional regulation and control. Like there's also there's also epigenetic concerns, right? So trauma, improper diet, things like that can have negative effects on development, and you're going to get less of that in a white suburb in middle class area than you're going to get in like an inner city or a trailer park, right, with a bunch of meth heads. And so it's like we don't really know perfectly, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm so adamant on discussing race and IQ, even though it's a dangerous topic, because it's like, I mean, I want to know that. I want to, but I want to know why. I want to know to what degree we can use environmental interventions to close that gap and to increase the IQ of demographic populations that are lower IQ, which means they're more prone to crime, they're less productive, they're more likely to be an economic leech on the tax base and on the system, because of welfare. They're more likely to raise children in single parent homes, and thus like it's a cycle that repeats itself. I want to know what we can do to fix these things.
That part of it, yes, but you do see that part of it is entirely philosophy. Like, it is a philosophy which makes a person a leech or a producer. Like what kind of world, like the three basic questions of philosophy, which is like how, like what kind of world is this, how do I know this, and what do I do? Like if your answers are the world is inherently cruel and against me, I can't know anything because nobody ever taught you, or you just think that you don't know anything. And like what should I do? I'll do whatever I want, basically hedonism. Then that creates that kind of a person, and then you add welfare on top of it. Then the society is affirming this, that yes, you are correct in all of this, here, take free money.
So
this
I don't
is
disagree
entirely
with you.
philosophical.
I don't disagree with you that it has an effect.
Mhm.
The problem is that whenever we do psychological interventions that are shown to be positive, they have a greater positive effect on higher IQ people, and they have a lower and sometimes null effect on lower IQ people. And I agree with you that
Sure.
if we can give a proper philosophy to low IQ people, those low IQ people are far more likely to be productive and have less criminal deviancy. And yeah, I want to do that. I want to see that.
I would
but,
say
like,
the next generation would have a higher IQ because those lower IQ people would be just better parents with the new philosophy.
it's possible,
Right?
but
Like you
there's
can see
there's
how
not any strong evidence to
this would
suggest that.
improve.
Most of the evidence points to a predominantly genetic or situation. I give it some wiggle room because it's heritability that we know, not necessarily genetic. And maybe there is certainly an argument that it might have an effect, and that you might even have a higher IQ generation the next time. But what won't have been changed is the genetic factor, and the genetic factor is likely very strong. And so,
to the extent that there is genetic factor, right? Because
but
and
environmental
I don't even
factors
deny
can,
that there are genetic factors here. There might just be, right?
yeah, but like there's also environmental factors that
To the extent it's not genetic, philosophy will be the driving factor of improvement.
Crod, I've said hi to you twice. You keep coming in and going, "Yo, what's up? What's up?" I'm chit chatting, but I've said hi a couple times. Maybe you missed it because it was quick. Yeah, well, it's like, so for example, my biggest problem is like, because we don't talk about this shit, then nobody talks about lead water pipes in inner cities, right? And like, what do we know? What do we know about lead water pipes? We know that there's no safe level of lead. There's only less poison and more poison. We know that lead causes developmental issues in the development of brains, especially in pregnant women, and that lowers IQ. And we know that there is a strong correlation, and it might just be the IQ, but I think it's more than that, in how the brain is affected by lead towards criminality or deviancy, right? And it's like, so because we don't talk about this, we don't talk about just how important it would be to get rid of lead in our drinking water, in our paint, and our things like. I mean, we talk about it a little bit. Nobody talks about just how important it is. And where do we see the highest rates of lead in the soil, in the foundations of homes, and in the water? We see it in inner city communities.
Old neighborhood, right?
Yeah, we see it in inner city communities, in high crime areas.
Yeah.
This showed up on my FYP for you page, I'm assuming is what that is.
Yeah.
I'm just checking to see what it is because somebody paid me $10. Okay, like I don't disagree with you that there is a possibility that